It's funny. When I first launched my website, it's a whole thing about AI and everything, and even though it was getting some really great feedback, all I could think was they're gonna figure me out. Like any day now, everyone's gonna realize I have no clue what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And it turns out this isn't just me being me.
Yeah.
You shared some similar feelings, and it's actually something that researchers have given a name: imposter syndrome.
Right. Yeah. And you might be surprised to know that this feeling of being a fraud, like you said, despite your accomplishments, it's incredibly common. We're talking like up to 70% of people experience it at some point. And what's wild is it's not just, a lack of confidence. It's often the highest achievers who feel this the most.
Okay, see, now that's really interesting. Why would it be the people who are seemingly killing it who feel this way? It almost seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, well, that's where the research gets really fascinating. One study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, they found that people who are prone to imposter syndrome, they tend to have incredibly high personal standards, like really, really high.
Wow.
And they're also more likely to attribute their successes to external factors, like
Yeah.
luck or timing instead of their own ability.
So it's like they can't accept that their hard work and their talent are what got them there.
Yeah, they almost need to explain it away, And this constant pressure to achieve, combined with a tendency to focus on even the smallest mistakes, it really fuels those feelings of inadequacy. It's a recipe for that nagging voice saying, you're not good enough, you don't deserve this success.
And we can't forget about the world we live in today. Social media has to play a role in this,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. A 2018 study from the University of Pennsylvania, they found a direct link between social media use and increased feelings of imposter syndrome. And it makes sense, right? Because we're constantly bombarded with these curated versions of other people's lives, which makes our own accomplishments um, feel less significant, even if they're actually, pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's like everyone else is always winning, which just amplifies that feeling of, wait, am I the only one who feels behind?
Mm.
So if you're listening to this and thinking this sounds way too familiar, let's talk about how to actually spot the signs of imposter syndrome. It's almost like having, a split personality, right? On the one hand, you've got your achievements, maybe even some outward confidence, but then there's this inner voice that's like, yeah, but they're going to find out.
Right, exactly. And that internal struggle is where those more concrete signs of imposter syndrome, those really start to show up. You know what I mean?
Okay, so what? Give us the insider info.
For example, let's say you totally crush a presentation at work.
Right. Been there, felt the panic right afterward even more.
Right, exactly. And instead of just like enjoying that well-deserved praise, that imposter syndrome voice just pipes up with, they're just being nice. Or even worse, what if they ask me a follow-up question that I can't answer?
Oh, I hate that. So you're saying even when there's concrete evidence of success, imposter syndrome will just try and dismiss it.
Precisely, yeah. You might even like downplay your achievements,
Uh,
chalk them up to luck or the timing or anything but like your own hard work and talent.
hmm.
And here's the thing, this constant need to like prove yourself, it can lead to some, pretty unhealthy habits.
Like what?
Well, think about it. If you're terrified of like being exposed as a fraud, you might overwork yourself to try and compensate, right? You're pulling all-nighters, you're taking on way too many projects, you're constantly striving to be, like the absolute best, even if it means completely burning yourself out in the process.
It's like that fear of failure almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You're so busy trying to outrun it that you actually end up exhausted and even more convinced that you're not good enough.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why it's so important to remember that imposter syndrome, it thrives on secrecy. It makes you feel like you're the only one going through this, which just makes those feelings of isolation and self-doubt like even worse.
That's really powerful. Just acknowledging that you're not alone in this can be like a huge step in the right direction. What did you say?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. In fact, a lot of experts actually believe that talking about these feelings openly, it's one of the most effective ways to start dismantling, that imposter syndrome's power.
Okay, so let's get practical here. Like if you're listening to this and you're realizing, yep, that's me, imposter syndrome, got it. What can you actually do about it?
Well, the good news is imposter syndrome is totally beatable. It's not about magically erasing those feelings overnight. It's more about learning how to like manage them and reframe your thinking, right? And one of the most powerful things you can do is something that we touched on earlier,
Ooh.
talk about it.
Like actually tell someone, hey, I feel like a fraud sometimes. That just feels terrifying, but also kind of liberating at the same time.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised how many people can relate to that, you know? Just knowing you're not alone in this can make a huge, huge difference. But, sometimes you need strategies for those moments when that imposter syndrome voice just like pops up, in real time.
Oh, yeah. Like right when you're about to give a big presentation and your heart's racing.
Yeah.
Give us the, like, in-the-moment tactics.
So, one of the best is actually incredibly simple. Breathe.
Okay.
Seriously. When those negative thoughts start spiraling, just take a few deep breaths. I know it might sound cliche, but it can really help to calm your nervous system and quiet those anxious thoughts.
Okay, I can do that. Breathe. Check. What else?
So this is where that reframing we talked about, this is where that comes in. Instead of focusing on like what could go wrong, what if you made a conscious effort to focus on what you've done well?
So instead of thinking, I'm going to mess this up, it's more like, no, I'm prepared for this. I've got this.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about shifting your perspective, challenging those negative thoughts with like actual evidence. Remember all those successes you were downplaying. This is where you remind yourself of them.
I love that. It's like creating a mental highlight reel of all the times that you crushed it.
Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be like anything major. Even small wins count. Did you meet a deadline? Did you get some like positive feedback on a project? Write it down. These are all pieces of evidence that, you are capable and deserving of success.
This has been such an eye-opener, this whole deep dive. So to wrap this up for you listening, if you're, struggling with those feelings of self-doubt, just remember, you are not alone. This is way more common than you think. And the more that you can talk about it and reframe those negative thoughts and celebrate your wins, honestly, the quieter that imposter syndrome voice is going to become.
And here's something to ponder, as you go about your day. What if we all feel like imposters sometimes? What if it's just part of the human experience, especially when we're like stretching ourselves and trying new things?
That's such a powerful thought. Maybe the real secret is that there are no real experts. We're all just figuring it out as we go along. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into imposter syndrome. We'll catch you next time.